All right, let's talk about England's education system, because right now it's facing some huge challenges. We're talking everything from funding crises to digital revolutions. The pressure is seriously on. So let's dive right in.
And to kick things off, just listen to this. The National Governance Association says the system for kids with special needs is on a trajectory toward complete breakdown. I mean, that's not just a warning, that's an alarm bell, and it really sets the stage for the biggest crisis schools are facing.
Right. So that crisis, it's all about SEND, special educational needs and disabilities. This is where you can really see the pressure, and honestly, where the human cost is felt the most.
And look, this isn't just a few people complaining. We've got an official report from Ofsted, that's the school's inspectorate, and the Care Quality Commission, and they found systemic failures. We're talking about kids' needs not being spotted early enough, teachers not getting the right training, and schools just flat out not having the resources to give kids the support they're actually legally entitled to.
So, what are parents doing about this? Well, they're fighting back. The number of SEND tribunals, that's basically when a parent has to formally appeal a counsel's decision on their child's support, it jumped by a huge 18% in just 1 year.
And get this, when those tribunals actually reached a decision, a mind-boggling 99% of them sided with the parents. 99%. That tells you there's a massive disconnect between what's being offered and what's actually needed and required by law.
Okay, so why is this happening? It really boils down to a few key things. First, schools just don't have the money for things like building adaptations or extra support staff. Then you've got school behavior policies that can be way too rigid for kids with different needs. But here's a big one, a key funding rule, where schools have to pay the first £6,000 for support. That number hasn't changed since 2014. With inflation, it's lost over 30% of its value. That's a huge hit. So, how is the government responding to all this? Well, they're throwing money at the problem, but it's not that simple. It involves some really tough choices.
And the headline number is massive. We're talking £3 billion over 4 years. The idea is to create thousands and thousands of new specialist school places for these kids, to try and stop this postcode lottery where support depends entirely on where you live.
But here's the billion-dollar question, or $3 billion question, where is this money actually coming from? Because it's not just new cash appearing out of thin air. It's a high-stakes trade-off happening right inside the education budget.
And here's the trade-off. It's pretty stark. A big chunk of that money is coming from canceling 46 planned free school projects. Now, free schools are basically new schools, often set up by community groups that are independent. So what we're seeing is a direct choice. Stop building these new mainstream schools and instead put that money into creating specialist places for the kids who need it most.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. While the system is busy fighting all these fires over funding, it's also trying to look ahead and modernize. And a big part of that is the idea of digital exams. So, the official exams regulator, Ofqual, is now seriously looking at moving some GCSEs and A-levels to on-screen exams. I mean, this is a pretty huge step. The goal is to finally bring these major exams into the 21st century. But don't expect this to happen overnight. They're not just flipping a switch. The plan is to roll this out very carefully. They'll start small, with less popular subjects. Digital and paper exams will be treated as totally separate things. Oh, and no using your own laptop. It has to be on school hardware. And the timeline? We probably won't see the first of these exams until the end of the decade.
And this right here is exactly why they're being so cautious. Look at these numbers. Sure, 88% of students have a device at home, which sounds great, but only 43%, less than half, can actually use it whenever they want without having to share. That's the digital divide, and it creates a huge fairness problem if you rush into online exams.
So the big question is, how are schools supposed to pay for all of this new tech? Well, according to the Education Secretary, they're on their own. This quote makes it crystal clear. Schools are expected to find the money for all this stuff from the budgets they already have, which, as we know, are stretched incredibly thin.
All right, so this digital shift isn't just about exams. It's changing everything about students' lives, and it's creating brand new, really complex welfare challenges that schools are now having to deal with.
And here's something you might find pretty surprising. When it comes to the UK's counter-terrorism strategy, PREVENT, who do you think makes the most referrals? It's the education sector. Teachers in schools account for 36% of all cases. It just goes to show the incredible safeguarding role that's been placed on their shoulders.
And this digital impact goes way beyond just safety concerns. It's getting deep into personal well-being. You know, with official mental health services being so overwhelmed, young people are starting to look for support in some, well, pretty unconventional places.
And this is just wild. 40%. That's the percentage of young people affected by youth violence who are turning to AI chatbots for mental health support. 40%. It points to this enormous gap in services, where talking to a bot feels easier or maybe just less judgmental than talking to a person.
Okay, so we've covered a funding crisis, this push to go digital, and these totally new welfare challenges. Let's step back for a second and connect the dots, because it really paints a picture of a system that's under a ton of strain.
Because what you realize is, these aren't separate issues. They're all connected. The fight for SEND funding is tied to why there's no money for new computers. The complex problems students face online just pile more pressure onto schools that are already at their limit. The whole system is basically being forced to juggle all these crises at the exact same time.
Which brings us to the big final question, right? We're seeing some bold changes for sure, that huge investment in SEND, the slow walk towards digital exams. But when you look at the sheer scale of all these challenges, are these moves enough? Are they enough to build an education system that's not just surviving, but is genuinely inclusive and actually ready for what's coming next? That's really the question we're left with.